This episode, building out an ADA bathroom. Recently, Larry, your humble host, converted a family room into an ADA bathroom bedroom suite. With our aging population, we thought it might be a discussion to have here on the show and actually talk about the process and why we did what we did. Welcome to the Handyman Pros Radio Show, home improvement and maintenance tips from the pros. Thanks for listening to another edition of the Handyman Pros Radio Show, where our goal is to help save you time, money, and aggravation on your home maintenance and repair. This edition is entitled Building Out an ADA Bathroom. To help me explain, I'm here with my ever-cheerful co-host and old buddy, John. Johnny?
Yes, we're here live.
Here's Johnny. We're here live.
Live
Go ahead.
Live
What's
on
been
set,
happening this
baby.
week? Yeah, what's been happening this week?
Well, you're not going to believe it, but just
I believe anything from you.
well,
Anything.
I was out on my deck, and I was looking at everything, and I can see trouble a mile away now. You know, it's right. It's just I can see.
What's that?
I
You
can see the
you
rot.
saw your wife's car coming up the driveway?
That too. I had rot starting all over, and I got out. I got a little rotary rasp out, and I just went through and just punched a bunch of holes with all the rot and cleaned it all out before it got big, and just put some filler in there, repainted it, done. But it's the weirdest thing, right? I can see this stuff now. You just look around, you're like, oh man, it's starting all over the place. So
The joys of owning a home built in the 90s, right?
yeah,
Is that what it is?
yeah. So anyways, that's what's been going on. But we wanted to do something like this show here for a little while about the ADA. So the
Yeah,
ADA bathroom. So go ahead.
little bit about ADA and a little bit about just converting a home over to, we'll call it a home for somebody that's got mobility issues. So
Yep.
a special person in my life has actually developed some issues in being mobile, and so we decided that instead of trying to take them to a facility that's designed for it, we would convert the home over into a home that's more friendly for somebody that basically needs to live on one floor is what it is. So with that, we decided, we looked at the way the home was laid out. This particular home was built in the early 70s. Speaking of old homes with lots of rot, but this home actually has some issues that are pretty unique. Like the floors have sunk a good, half an inch, no, more than a half an inch, probably almost an inch in the center of the rooms. But anyway, be that as it may, we decided to work on converting this over. So we thought we would do this, that we would talk about this thing, John, because it's becoming a very, I don't know if I want to say popular, but it's an option for people.
Yeah.
So this particular person, or people, I should say, it's two people, have lived in this home for more than 50 years, and they really don't want to move. They didn't want to move. They thought about downsizing and all that thing, and then basically they were looking at downsizing, and then COVID hit. And actually, I guess it's been a blessing that COVID hit, because if they had tried to downsize, it would have been just a disaster. To be honest, it would have been
Yeah.
a terrible disaster. So everything happens for a reason, as we like to say. And so your humble host here got himself a chance to build an ADA bathroom. We call it a suite, actually, because we did more than just the bathroom. We actually laid the room out, and we'll get into that a bit. But let's talk a bit about the ADA regulations. John, you did some research on this. So this comes from the American Disabilities Act of 1990.
Yeah, yeah. And this was just kind of a standardized way of what you just said was dealing with some of the people that have issues getting around.
Mm-hmm.
Where it was a lot of legalities and things like that were put into place. Some of them are a little stringent, shall we say, for commercial. But that sparked a whole thing about what we generally have now is we put this blanket of ADA over the top of a way to get the people that can't move around too well.
You mean like Braille in the drive-through, John? Are you saying that's too
Exactly.
stringent? That's a
Exactly.
little too stringent?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of good things that came out of it, and
Yes.
it brought it to our attention of how you can design, in this case, a bathroom for people to get around in. And it gets, when you think about it, you have mobility issues. It's tough. I did it for my parents,
Right.
but I know that you were involved in a big project down there that you were doing. So it has to do with it when you look at, especially in a bathroom. And I'm not talking about the whole house. We're just talking about the bathroom in particular right now. But it's the toilets.
It's toilets,
It's
it's shower
that's
facilities, it's bedroom. It's actually a lot of it has to do with, and this is where it applies to other parts of the house as well, but how you actually move through the space and think about it with a
yeah,
walker or with a wheelchair.
yeah,
And either one is about the same width and things like that. But there's just some concerns. You can't jam everything together. Um, and like ADA regulations say the toilet needs to be at least 17 inches. Well, uh, for example, and we'll get into a lot of this in a little bit, but we put a 19-inch one in.
yeah,
Why? Because
yeah,
it's tough to sit down and you get squatted down too far, and it's really, really difficult to get back up. Lavatories need to be 34 inches off the floor. I don't know why you would have a lavatory that's lower than that. Of course, I'm rather tall, but it's still very problematic to have your sinks too low in my world. But the idea with the ADA stuff is you can get up underneath, and actually, we did that as well. And then grab bars need to be at least 34 inches off the
yeah,
ground according to regulation. But the sometimes you customize things to what your particulars are, is what I say. These are minimums, right? So they say minimum of 34
yeah,
inches. Ours
yeah,
were actually, we put ours at 38, and we did that for a reason. And that was because of where this particular person was. Their grabbing was a little bit
yeah.
higher, and it just worked out better. So yeah, with that, there's lots and lots too. John, what ADA compliant stuff is available? We talked a little bit about grab bars and lavatories, and
So yeah, so I mean, where I have found a good source, it's a big box store.
yep,
You go to big box stores and they have a whole section of all of these kind of things. Um, when I was doing it, they've got the taller toilets, they've got boosters, toilet seats, they've got all the grab bars. Let's see what else is on the list here.
you can
Um,
get vanities there.
Vanities, the
They're
non-slip
generally not in
mats.
stock. Yeah, they're not in stock, but non-slip mats.
Right,
Generally in an ADA bathroom, you're going to want a handheld shower,
right.
or shower head, because you're going to be bathing people with that.
Yeah,
But that's
yeah. That was
that's
the other
more of the
thing I
stuff.
put in. Hmm.
So, I just want to delve into some of those specifics. One of the things, because we looked at this stuff, so we've described this a million times that, you and I both are planners, and also my wife is definitely a planner. And so she was involved in this design process as well. And one of the things that, like, for example, grab bars. Now, you have options when you look at grab bars. How mobile is the person? We purchased the grab bars that are textured. We did that for a reason, because especially in the shower when they're wet, you want the grip on it. And you don't realize it until you've been in one without it and your hands get wet and it's just like you slide
Yeah,
down
I
the
never
bar.
did
What good
understand.
is that, right?
I never did understand that they made them out of slick stainless.
Out of slick stainless, and they make options that are they're either knurled, or they have like it's a rougher
Yeah,
surface.
yeah,
And I when John, you and I, we talk a lot about planning, right? And you went through it. Did you buy any of the ones with the slick stainless steel ones or
I
not?
did. I
You
did.
did.
I
And
did.
you
That
found
was the
out
only
the
ones I
hard way,
saw at the
right?
time.
Yeah. So you
Yeah,
learned the hard way,
I
right?
did. I did.
Yeah.
But the other ones I know you're talking about, it's almost like the safety on a stair tread.
Yes, and it's
Yeah,
it's just I don't know if it's how they cast the metal. I really don't care. All I
yeah,
know is it's got a rough surface on it, and so when your hands are wet, definitely for the shower for sure. Um, a little bit different. I'm going to say there's a difference between horizontal mount and vertical mount, because vertical mounts, the slippery ones, aren't as bad, but when you're doing a horizontal mount, you definitely don't want your arm sliding back. If your arm slides down a little bit, generally you still have leverage. In fact, usually you'll have more leverage lower than you do higher. But
hmm,
anyway, it's a physics thing. So with that, we just I just wanted to get into some of that stuff, and there's a whole lot of other things too. Non-slip is critical. And you want to be cognizant of what you're trying to do. And remember, if you're dealing with a wheelchair, things are lower, right? They're lower.
yeah,
So in your planning stages, you've got to be pulling up. John, for the video, you had some pictures, and I think it's because we're going to start it. We'll start talking about what we did in the build. So if you can pull up those pictures, and if you can, I'll describe them. So
Exactly.
so we started off, this room was an office. It was technically in the home, being it was a 70s built home, it probably was designed to be a living room. One thing, a little aside, there wasn't an overhead light in this whole house. Everything was on
Yo.
plug-in switches for lamps, so all the switches were on lamps. I, why did we ever do that? Anyway, be that as it may, that's a caution. If you're working on a house that was built in the maybe late 60s, early 70s, understand that some of the electric might be wired, all the switches might be wired into switches, all the outlets might be wired into switches. That's what I found in this home. And it mattered at the time when I was like rewiring. I'd pulled down drywall and stuff, and we were rewiring, but that not a whole lot of fun. It wasn't bad because we had drywall down, but at the end of and I don't have pictures of that, but it doesn't really matter. You all have seen drywall.
That is funny you brought that up. None of the homes that I remember growing up, and none of them had recessed. Nobody had lights in their ceiling.
Yeah, no light, no overhead light at all. Like okay, whatever. Whatever, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Anyway, just an aside. Just be aware if you're doing a remodel on an older home, you might have this.
Yeah. So, anyways, back to this picture.
So. This was an office, and it was a pretty good sized room. It wasn't huge. I think it was 10 by 14, if I remember right, or something like that. It was longer than it was wide, and when we got in, my idea was I wanted to have it basically be as minimally invasive as possible. And when I say that, the wall that you're looking at there with the pictures on it, the faraway wall, was an outside wall. And I'll explain this more in some of the future pictures, but we were trying not to get into the outside walls if we could help it. Both in this room, sorry, I just scratched my nose. In this room, the left-hand side you see are windows, so that's an outside wall as well. The inside wall, the wall to the right of the picture is a wall that goes to actually where they have their family room, living room, whatever you want to call it. So that's an interior wall. That wall was load bearing though, just so you kind of have an understanding of what we're doing. There were French doors. Where this picture is taken is through the French doors. You don't see the French doors in this picture, but there were two French doors there so that just kind of gives you the landscape of the room. We had two French doors with with two outside walls and two interior walls. So that's the first picture. Flip up the second picture there, John. I just want to go over what the process was we used. So we cleaned the room out, obviously. We moved it actually straight across the way. There was a dining room, which we did away with the dining room because, to be honest, these people were never hosting a dining event again. So it just was kind of a natural progression to move that office across the way. He really it was his office. He really wanted the office to be on the main level because he still works on occasion, and so he wanted to be in the room so he could assist. If need be, on the main level. So we cleaned that out. Now, what you see there, if you'll look in the picture, there's tape marks all over the place, blue tape, the famous blue tape, right?
Yeah.
So again, this room, we were creating a bedroom bathroom suite, kind of basically like almost, I don't want to say a hospital room, but like a hospital room where the bedroom and bathroom are in the same room. And so when you're looking on the floor there, you'll see blue tape marks, and that's actually where we put the bed in. We took blue tape and we marked every single thing out, John. And the reason that we did that is we wanted to have a flow pattern for the room. And folks, again, if you're not used to dealing with anybody with a walker or a wheelchair, you do have to account for easy motions through the room. And because these people are not spry, I guess I want to say, right? And your parents went through this, John. So, I know what we're talking about. So we taped this all off. And we just taped off where everything was, and then we actually walked the room. And so we wanted to make sure we put things where we thought they were going to be appropriate. And the bed was there. We decided to put the shower in the back right-hand corner and put a toilet and sink in the front left-hand corner. We wanted to do it linearly along the wall because we needed easy access from the viewpoint of where this picture's taken. That was the entry point. So it needed to flow, and we had to move around the bed because we could not put the bed in any other place. So we had to be able to move around the bed, and it actually gave us enough room, or it gave us actually a very decent walkway, which gave easy access back to the left-hand corner of the room for the toilet, which is, believe it or not, is the most important thing. Got to be able to get to the toilet. We also wanted lots of room. If you're doing ADA stuff, remember that people with mobility issues have a hard time like walking backwards. So you want to be able to swing. And John, do you remember this with your parents? You
Mm-hmm.
want to be able to try to get as close to the toilet as possible before they turn around.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so in our planning, we actually took the walker. Granted, it was people that were mobile, but we took the walker and we walked it. We actually used the walker to do
Yeah.
that. And then
Smart.
we took a
Yeah.
wheelchair. Yeah. And we took a wheelchair and did the same thing. There was some political issues, I'll call them, where there were a couple people that wanted to have input into the design, which I had no problem with because they came up with some great ideas, particularly on some future things that we'll show you in the other pictures. But originally they wanted the toilet on the other side of the room, and I kept going, but you got to go around the bed and back into the back corner, and it's just not going to be good. It's too much motion. It was bad flow. It was too much walking for somebody that has mobility issues,
Yeah.
right?
Sure.
Sure.
One of the things I saw in the if I go back to that picture, all the yellow stickies on the wall.
Yeah, so the wall, those were marks for where we were actually going to put. Let me just take a look at some of them. Yeah, those were all the initial marks for where we were going to put showers, what we were going to do for, or where we were going to put the shower head, where we were going to put seating, where we were going to put in a sink and a bathroom and all that kind of thing, where we needed power. We really, really, really did this. I am not a great person personally with plans. Plans are good, but I love, if I've got a room like this, for me, it works really well to actually walk that room and lay stuff out. And I can see it once I do it on the walls. But what I'm looking at when I do it in real life, and you know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about, John, is
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just different when you're in the actual space.
Right.
So we just took and we put sticky notes on there, and we started making, notes of where we wanted to put all this stuff. And for me, that works really, really well. And I mean, it never hurts, I guess. It's
Yeah.
the cost of some tape and the cost of some sticky pads,
Mm-hmm.
but save one little issue. So I'm going to backtrack. The reason that we had to do this was this house, again, was built in the 70s. The bathrooms were tiny, 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 tiny.
Yeah.
And every shower, they were shower bath combinations, and every single one went through a 32-inch door into this tiny room that was probably 5 feet wide and maybe they were like 5 by 5 squares. Somebody was going to get hurt. It was either going to be the person that was being cared for or the person doing the caring, meaning the caretaker.
Right.
Like an impossible situation to get people. And this was in the upstairs portion of the home. And we had one of the mobile stair lifts that lifted that would carry the person up the stairs. But it just added so much complexity. And I was scared to death that somebody was going to get hurt. Somebody that was healthy was going to get hurt, let alone the person with the mobility issues.
Sure.
So we had this space, and we just said, let's do it, and let's do it right. And that's when we got into all this planning kind of stuff. Now, you didn't have that situation.
No, I had it was the big cast iron tubs,
Oh, yeah.
How do you get in and out of those things? It's stand up, shower and all that. It can be a big, let's just put it this way, a big adventure to build out something like this.
Right.
And a lot of money, but
Well, I'll get into the finance.
Yeah.
I'll do a recap right at the end when we get done with this. So that's the initial layout that we did. John, bring up that next picture that's there. and we'll just take a look at that. So this is just after we did all that layout. I just basically studded out from the drywall. Now I did put a vapor barrier in behind the shower. I did that on the inside edge of the green board that I put up underneath that. But I just went right over the top of the drywall. There was
Mm-hmm.
no reason for me to get into that outside wall and have to deal with insulation and all of that kind of stuff. So I just built basically I framed up the 2x4 walls that we were going to use. They were attached to the basic facilities that were already there. Heating and air conditioning was actually perfect. Everything fit. I mean, we got lucky, right? We got lucky. But sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. A lot of it too was just the fact that we spent so much time in the layout. We probably spent 2 or 3 days just doing that layout and getting everything right. So that we had a really good game plan going in before we started.
Mm-hmm.
We had an idea of the materials we needed. We knew, we had layout. I knew where, like, for example, I knew where the plumbing was. So where the 4-inch line was downstairs, and it all just, I'd rather be lucky than good. Let's just put it that way. Everything was pretty much where we needed it. I didn't take any pictures downstairs. I should have, but I'm working on it. It's
Yeah.
a work in progress for Larry to get more pictures.
Yeah. No. Well, it looked, it's smart to spend most of your time up front planning this out
Yeah, I mean,
and laying it all out, because it makes it so much easier once you get going. You know what you're just blowing and going at that point. But, um, so you studded out from the wall. Let me go back to that picture. You studded out from that back
yep,
wall,
yep.
and I see you rip down everything onto the on the other wall there.
So that wall had it had the old wooden paneling,
Oh yeah.
regular old just wooden whatever they call that stuff.
Oh yeah.
Thank God those days are gone.
Oh yeah.
And so it was coming down no matter what, because we were building a shower, and we built a shower in a full bathroom facility, and it was going to be a mess. It was just going to be a mess. Plus, it's much easier to do wiring and things with this, studs out basically.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
it's just so much faster. So we took that all down. We got rid of it, and went that way. So what else? Any other? Do you have any other? Just while we're going, John, do you have
No,
any other
no. I
questions?
mean, no, I'm following. I hope the rest of the audience is following. It's fairly straightforward, and
Yeah, at this point, it
yeah,
became just a build.
yeah,
We'll call it just a build. Once we had all the planning, we just started building. Like you said, we basically, I mean, I got to where I could pretty much blow and go. It really
right.
was not a difficult build. There's a few things that we'll get to, but pull up the next picture, John, and we'll just take a look. Um, So that's the studding out. Yeah, we just studded that back wall out.
Oh,
So now you're seeing it's actually a superimposed picture, but it's the finished product, and then I'm standing over in the back. And actually, what I'm doing is I'm installing the grab bars in this particular picture. I think the things that I want to point out in this picture, and folks, so if you understand, basically
let me see
Larry's
if I
standing in,
can't get this up a little bit there.
yeah. Larry's standing in we built the shower itself ended up being 5 feet by 4 feet. So it was a big shower. We did that on purpose. The idea was, again, if you're using a wheelchair, you
Let
really
me see
don't
if I
want to.
can't. I'm sorry, Larry.
I said,
There we go.
yeah, there you go. If you're using a wheelchair, folks, you want to be able to really roll that wheelchair in there. Now, one of the things in the picture is you'll see on the left-hand side of the wall down there, it's a teak bench.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So that teak bench actually folds up out of the way. It's made by, I think it's a Moen product. No, it doesn't matter. It's Moen or it's Kohler. I can't remember either one, but it's a teak bench that mounts on stainless steel rails. Folks, I'll never put in another seated bench in a bathroom again, because that thing folds up and out of the way, and it's fantastic.
Yeah,
I
let
mean,
me ask you something. I agree with you. I've never seen. Well, you told me about this when you were doing it,
yeah, yep.
uh, but I never. I don't know if I've ever seen that. That's really clever. That's really nice.
Yeah, and you kind of can't see it in the picture, but it's really sturdy and strong. It's teak both up and back, but it folds like this. It works great. I think it's a Kohler product actually. And the best thing, John, I mean the best thing of all the things, it was about $300,
Uh huh.
which is really not terribly expensive. If you were to build like, this is why I say I'll never build another one. Women like to have a place to sit to shave their legs and stuff. And if you want, never again, because it's always a source of leaks and things when you try to tile it over. The tile time takes forever to do it. And this thing was, this was so simple to install. You just bolt it into the studs. I will say I put in all kinds of supports because I knew I was putting grab bars and putting this stuff in. I put in 2x6s sideways, across, so that you had a good mounting plate
Yeah.
into the backs of all of these things.
Yeah.
But I'll never build like a shower alcove again. I'll use this thing because it's just so much easier.
That's a great tip, because that thing folds in. Now you've got all the space back again.
All the space back again,
which is brilliant. That's a great find.
If you flip back to that picture again, John, I just wanted to go over, there's just a bunch of things we want to talk
sure.
about. So up there, you see a traditional shower head up on the right-hand side of the picture.
Yeah.
So we did that because the person that doesn't have the mobility issues, if he chose to use that shower, he actually can use that shower. We plumbed that separate from the shower head. There's a handheld on the left-hand side. And you'll also notice there's an alcove there that's basically down at the bottom. It's at if you're sitting on the bench, it's right here to your left. So it's right there. So you can reach in and grab, if you're on that bench, you can reach in and grab your products. You can use the handheld, give yourself a shower and clean yourself off. And there's also grab bars on both sides of that. So if you need to grab on, and then you see long grab bars that run all the way around. And all of that is just, it's easier to put that stuff in before, to get it braced up and do everything beforehand than it is to try to do it afterwards. Yeah. So we just went, and the cost is very nominal. Those grab bars are not terribly expensive. So it was just better to do that all the way around. And then we put the other alcove just to store other types of products. If you wanted to have extra or whatever, or the person without mobility issues can have their products up there if they chose to do so. One thing I think that you don't see that you might see in one of the future pictures is the floor of this actually. So I said it's 4 feet wide. John, how much fall do you think there was in that 4-foot span on this beautiful 1972 model house?
Yeah, I can see.
It was about 3/4 of an inch over 4 feet. Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, it was a lot.
Now, let me ask you this before you go on. I noticed something. If I go back to this picture, what'd you use for all of the tiling?
So first off, if we're going to build ADA, if you really want to build ADA, and if you're thinking you're going to use, if you're going to have people with real mobility issues, it has to be curbless, okay? Because a wheelchair has to roll over it. You're not going to have a curb in there. So we had developed a relationship. In one of our shows, we talked to Mike Foti from Innovate Building Supplies. And Mike has a whole series of, he's got some great resources, folks, if you want to build. I spent a lot of time on his website going through his ideas, his design ideas, but he also has some really unique products. And probably the most unique product that he has that we used here is he had a shower base that fit in underneath the floor without cutting the joists up underneath the thing. It mounts flat on the joists, and it is a shower pan that you can mount tile over, and it actually has the pitch is right if your floor doesn't fall 3/4 of an inch and 4 feet. Different issue. We'll get to that in a little bit. But in a normal, if the floor is level, everything is there. All you do is tile over it, put the drain in, good to go. The piece is pricey, but it's well worth it. So ask.
Yeah, let me pause you there. But the walls, the tile on the wall, that's Mike Foti's stuff, right? Is that?
No, the walls are those are tiles. I think we bought them at, I can't remember, Floor and Decor or something. But those are large format tiles.
Okay, cool.
And we put green board up behind it because we would have used hardy board, but in my analysis, if you want to call it that, this is probably a 10, maybe a 15-year project. Maybe this is not a 30-year project, folks. Unfortunately, the math doesn't work, meaning neither of these people are basically going to be alive in 15 years just because the math, they would be 100+ years old. And I hope they make it that long, but the reality is it's probably not going to be that long. So we opted to use green board instead of using hardy plank for cost reasons and also ease of build out, because it's pretty much easier. And for the walls now, the floor is a different issue. That we use the whole pan that Mike Fody used. So it was a 5x4 pan set right in there. We put the drywall down over the edge of that, just like you would in a traditional situation, with a 1/4 inch gap up underneath it so that you don't get water soaking up into the drywall. And then we tiled over the top of that and then grouted everything and sealed it up. So
cool.
yeah, so that's some of that. And again, Mike had some of these products and some of the other products he didn't have. So, we just looked at the whole plethora of different options available, and there were a lot of options. So, but there's a lot of different options, and utilize those resources that are out there. So, it's a good thing.
Well, let's roll on to the next picture.
So that's the picture. Yeah. So this is the finished product, and we opted for just a traditional shower curtain because, again, if you're moving a wheelchair in and out of there, it's much easier to have a shower curtain than it ever is to have a glass door. It's just the reality of the world, as we want to say. So we put that in. What you don't see here is when I told you there was that 3/4 inch drop over 4 feet, the water did not. I knew it wasn't going to once I saw it installed and also put the level on it and found out it was off. I bought a 5-foot floor drain that mounts in underneath that mounted right up flush to the pan that Mike Fody put in. So there's a 5-foot drain that sits right in front of the whole shower pan. So water goes into the traditional drain that it's supposed to, but it also runs out and goes into the 5-foot drain in front of the pan. A pretty unique thing that was we'll call it an audible, if you want to call it that. I mean, when I got to it, I'm like, oh, how am I going to fix this? One of the options was raise the floor up 3/4 inch, raise the pan up 3/4 inch, but then you can get the wheelchair over it, or you could, but it'd be a major problem, right? And that would have required leveling the whole floor in the whole room. And to be honest, that was not going to be cost effective in any way whatsoever.
Yeah, right.
5-foot floor drain worked like a champ. Works like a champ. Now, one thing that we also did is too, we used a lot of paint on membrane. So we went down and we bought it. We didn't use Red Guard, but we used a similar product to what's Red Guard, or there's a Mapei product, which is actually what we use.
Stuff works great, doesn't it?
Works like a champ. We painted everything, and knowing what I know, I took about halfway out in the room and waterproofed the whole room. I would have done the whole room, but I didn't. Back towards the door wasn't going to be so much of a problem. But forward about halfway up the room, just painted the whole thing with a shower membrane. And the reason that we did that is, not to get disgusting, but there are incontinence issues sometimes with elderly people, and the time to make it waterproof is when you're building it, not after the fact, right? So again, these were all tips that came to me through reading some resources and things like that. Cheaper to just paint that stuff on. It's not terribly expensive either, by the way. I mean, it's a little expensive, but it's cheaper than a leak, right? It's way cheaper than a leak. So we just painted everything all the way around the toilets, basically went about 4 inches up. I think if you poured water in that room, you'd have a swimming pool.
Yeah.
So,
Let me ask you this. So that looks, if I go back to that looks great. I mean, that the finished product looks great. How much deviation from the original plan, as you were going through this project, did you experience, or, do you have to change a lot of things from the beginning of what you thought you might have to?
Really, not a whole lot. The floor drain was there. I will say there were a couple of products that we found fortunately, we found them before drywall went up. But if you look at that picture that you saw there on the left-hand side of the room, do you see where the toilet paper is?
Yeah.
That is actually an ADA grab bar that has a toilet roll, like just a place that you drop the toilet paper onto.
Oh, look at that. Yeah, right.
But what a great find,
Right.
because it was the right size for that. We had somewhat of a bit thing, but we got that. The other thing that you see there, if you look vertically to the left-hand side of or as you look at it, it's to the right-hand side of the toilet. You see that bar that's sitting up
Yes.
against the wall vertically? That is actually a flip down bar.
Mm-hmm.
So that bar lays down flat like this. Now you have a handrail that's an 80, so that the person can actually sit and hold that as they set themselves down on the commode.
Mm-hmm.
And that fold down thing is another one. I think that's a Kohler product. What a great product, because when you're not using it, or somebody that doesn't have mobility issues, you flip that thing up and it mounts up against the wall. It's out of the way enough that it's fantastic, but when you need it for the person with mobility issues, it's there. That was something we found actually as we were building the studs. We found that, so I ended up studying in for it, which was fine. It worked out great. But that was a product. So that was a bit of a change. Those were two changes. The floor drain was probably the biggest change. That was the one that was kind of like, oops. that was
Mm-hmm.
that was an oops moment. I'll tell
Yeah.
you. It was.
Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
was pretty easily fixed. It really
Yeah.
was pretty easily fixed. The whole room, we LVP'd the whole room. So
Mm-hmm.
you've got a waterproof layer on top of a waterproof layer. And, it's been dry. I've been in it many, many times
Yeah.
since then.
Yeah.
So,
Well, no, it looks, just to go to that picture there looks that looks really really nice.
and that cabinet that you see straight in the center of the picture
Mm-hmm.
that got the sink in it, that actually is an ADA compliant one. So you can roll a wheelchair
I
up
see
to that.
that. I was just going to ask
Yep.
you about that. Yeah.
Yep. And it's got a little bit of storage in underneath it, just a little bit, not much. It's because it's shaped kind of like this, or like this actually. So you kind of lose your storage space, but it's worthwhile.
Right.
Um, yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
it was just a question of finding some of these products that are designed for ADA, and once you find them, boy, they really are actually really pretty nice. So it is what it is. It was a process. It took us about 3 months to build that total time. I worked a week on and a week off because I had to
Yeah.
run the handyman business also. But I
Yeah.
worked a week on and a week off, and it took me about 3 months to
Yeah.
complete
No,
that
it
project.
looks great. Good
So
job. Good job.
yeah. Any other questions?
Um, no, I was just interested. When you said that the floor was off that much, how long did it? How long did you noodle that one out? Like, what am I going to do with this?
Um,
Because
not.
let me say this,
Yep.
because I would be sitting there saying, okay, wait a minute, I gotta have to fix this somehow. I mean, were you in the middle of doing? Did you just keep going, or did you say, wait a minute, I gotta fix this? Or I have a plan to overcome that.
Um, yeah, it's an
You see what I'm saying?
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. So when I laid the floor plan, the floor pan in there originally, before I attached it to the studs and all of that, I realized it was off, way off. I mean, way off. Like if you put a marble on it, it rolled out into the center of the room. I didn't realize that until after I had actually cut the flooring out, because it was 3/4 inch tongue and groove hardwood, and I'd cut the flooring out. When I laid that pan in there, I was like, it just didn't look right. I put the level on. I'm like, oh my God, it's way off.
Yeah.
And then, so then I got the measurements, and I'm like, it was like 3/4 of an inch. It was almost, because I leveled up the pan, and it was basically flush with the top of the flooring. So not so good. I had an idea, John, and I mean, I knew this idea because I had looked at, in these floor pans, or these shower pans, excuse me, you can get linear drains that run the width of the
Mm-hmm.
pan.
Yes.
So I was like, oh, well.
Oh, I see what you're. Yes.
So instead of having it in the center of the pan, now we put it to the front edge of the pan where the water, where the
Right.
grate is basically.
Right.
And problem solves. And believe it or not, that floor drain was, I want to say it was $175. Now this is kind of early on through COVID, so I haven't priced them lately, but maybe today they're $250. But as well as I do, that was a solution that was very inexpensive to do,
Oh,
because
absolutely. Compared to anything else, that's
it
what I'm asking. Yeah.
yeah. So to answer your question, no, I didn't, it wasn't planned out in advance, but I had the solution because I was looking at other products that were similar. They were similar. So I'm like, well, they make a 5-foot drain, so I'll just buy the 5-foot drain. I mean, that's kind of how it evolved. I'll call it that way. That's how it evolved. So then I just cut an extra slot out, dropped that 5 foot drain in there. I should have gotten a picture of it. I'll get a picture of it. We'll post it up on the Facebook group when I get done.
What
Um,
maybe I missed this. What is underneath that floor? What is that? Is that house on a slab or is that?
so that house is on a full basement,
Uh huh.
and it has 2 by 10, 2 by 10s, yeah, 2 by 10s for joists across the floor. Not well supported, I will tell you this, because it sagged quite a
Yeah.
bit. It
Right.
really, it really needed, probably 20 years ago, it needed to they needed to
Jack it
jack
up.
the floor.
Yeah.
But you
It
live
is
with
what it
what you
is
got. Yeah,
at this point.
at this point you get your hands dealt, right?
Yeah.
We wouldn't have been able to fix that anytime soon, because that would be a long, slow process, as you know. Folks, you can jack a floor up and make it back to level. It's just going to take you, I don't know, 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
um, it's not something that you can try cranking it up, but you're going to have a big, pretty interesting issues if you do that, like broken glass and broken drywall. But anyway, be that as it may, um, that's what we had underneath there. So, and all the plumbing too, and I'll get some pictures and put the plumbing pictures up. But there was a 4-inch drain that actually went upstairs that ran right through that outside wall. So it was really easy to tap into it, and it actually ran down and it paralleled the outside wall. Now it was inside the building, but it paralleled the outside wall. So tying in the toilet was basically almost straight down. It was
Yeah.
straight down and just over just a little bit. And same thing with the rest of the plumbing, because we furred that wall out. We had about a 3.5 inch. We used 2 by 4s, so we had a 3.5 inch separation off the outside wall, which actually brought the drains just down to where they were easy to work on up
Hmm.
underneath, because they were right there. Instead of trying to be in that outside wall and being up under the sill and all that kind of stuff, didn't have to do that. So then it became a really pretty simple plumbing project. And I actually, that was one of the other reasons. I guess I didn't think about it beforehand, but I did in the initial planning. That's why, another reason why I wanted to fur that wall out. I almost furred it out at 2 by 6, but then I thought that was overkill. So that was part of the reason why I furred that wall out too, because it was going to be hard to do the drain plumbing, from that side. So
How how long? What do you think the time? Kind of time to time. How much time you spent on this? I know you said it's about 3 months on and off, but how much? If you just had to do it at one time,
6 to 8 weeks.
6 to 8 weeks. And
Yep.
just for the audience out there that might be going through all these issues, what can I ask you? How much that whole thing might have run you?
So no labor, right? Because I
Yeah.
work cheap.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
in these kind of products, materials, between the materials and all of the products, and even the specialized products that we bought, we had about $15,000 into this project. So pretty reasonable, to be
Hmm.
honest. For all, I equated that to just one slip and fall.
Oh.
I'm going to tell you, right?
Oh yeah.
That's that's just a slip and fall.
Oh yeah.
And I would imagine if I were going to charge somebody for this one, doing it the way that it worked out, it probably would have been, I mean, I had 3 months into it, so I'd have 6 to 8 weeks into it, so it'd be $30,000
Yeah.
probably,
Yeah.
total
Yeah.
investment
Yeah. I was
with
gonna say
labor
probably
with labor and
25
all.
grand. But yeah, to do something like this. But these are the kind of considerations that you need to make when you have aging parents, and things like that you need to take care of.
Yeah.
Uh,
And John, you and I, we've talked about it at length, but one of the things is when you get to be, what we've found is that so I'm in my late 50s, John, you're in your early to mid 60s, we'll call it. And you go through this, it's kind of the stage of life, right? So there's when I start talking about it, all my friends are all like, "Oh yeah, I'm going through that with my parents. I'm going through that with my mother. I'm going through that with my father, whatever." And it's just, it's a stage of life. I've met, I don't know,
oh
probably
yeah. Yeah.
50 people now,
Everybody goes through it. And so so that was a complete build. Okay, folks, that's a complete build, and you can do a lot of these things, pieces and parts, for a lot less than that. So if you have to just do what I did, grab bars, a higher toilet, move some things around, it's not that bad. But when you get into a complete ADA, type of big build like you did, Larry, obviously the sky's the limit on how much you want to, spend for it. But
Well, one thing I didn't include, so $2,500 of that 15,000 actually was for a hospital bed. So that was a pretty considerable expense just by
yeah,
itself. So
yeah,
just so
yeah,
you understand, the the build itself was not really, there really weren't, believe it or not, there really isn't that much in the way of materials in there other than just there's studs and there's some
yeah,
drywall, but it all adds up. You know
yeah,
how it just adds up.
yeah.
It just adds up.
Look
It is.
good. Good job,
Yeah.
Larry.
Well, thank you. All right, John, do we have any other questions, concerns on this old ADA build?
I'm out, Larry. You got me. I'm
You're
out.
you're out. All right. Well, folks, if you enjoy the Handyman Pros radio show, please tell your friends and neighbors, send them a link, let them know about this craziness that goes on. We try to educate. We're trying to get people into the mode of how to do some of this stuff. And we talk a lot about planning, obviously, and this was a good example of how we plan for things. But most of this information, we're getting it from other people that we talk to and all that kind of thing. So we really, really do appreciate it. You can send us an email, questions@handymanprosradioshow.com. You can go to our website. We do have a newsletter that we're getting ready to really launch on a monthly basis soon. That's at handymanprosradioshow.com. Go into the contact section. There's actually a sign-in link that you can go there. Facebook's always good. We are at Handyman Pros, and on Twitter we are at Handyman Radio. John, I think the spaceship took you away last night. That's what I think.
Lots of grab bars.
That's what I heard. All right, folks, thanks for listening. We'll see you next week on the Handyman Pros Radio Show.